Hi guys, now in today's video I'm going to be making a petticoat. Now after my last 10 layer one I wasn't going to make one, but I've got two skirts that are long and the petticoats I've got are quite short, so I don't want them to be particularly full, but I want them longer length so it just makes the hem come out a little bit. So this is the skirt that I'm going to be taking the length off, and my top layer is going to be this beautiful bridal veil that I picked up in a charity shop, and then that's just going to be on the top. I'm going to start off by taking the measurement off the skirt. So I'm going to go from the top of the waistband down to the bottom, and that's measuring 29 inch, and I want my petticoat to be 2 inch shorter than the skirt, so that needs to be 27 inch when it's finished. Right, so I'm writing 27 inch down. Now, there's going to be 3 layers in total. You've got your top part, which that is just that stretched beautiful fabric, which is going to be this one. And I'm going to cut this to, what shall I cut that to? Just see. Right, I'm going to cut that to 9.5 inch, that one. And then that's going to allow for the top to be turned over and the elastic, and then the bottom, a little bit of seam allowance to attach it to the bottom. And then, so I'm going to take that 9.5 inch off the 27. Right, so that's going to be 18.5. That leaves me 18.5. So then I've got 2 tiers, so that's going to be 9.25, and then I need to add seam allowance onto that, and I don't put much seam allowance on it, so it's only a small amount I'm going to put on it. So at 9.25, and I'm working in inches. Right, so I think that, right, so I'm going to cut them to 10 inch. These pieces I'm going to cut to 10 inch. Cut, plain, 10 inch, top, 9.5. So I'm going to bring this around my waist, basically to get circumference for that top piece. Right, so that is 43 inch. Now, because that's stretched fabric, I can cut it at my measurement because I know it's going to stretch over my hips and my waist. So let me just get rid of that skirt, and then with my 43 inches I'm going to measure that across. So that's 43, so that's 21.5. 21.5. I'm going to cut that to 22, then that's a seam allowance on one side. And then I said 9.5 for this, didn't I? I'm going to get my tailor's chalk and just mark this across. Now my waist and hips are the same size, but if you are somebody that's got more of a slim shapely figure where your waist is tinier than your hip, then where I've just cut that straight, what you need to do is you need to, at both sides, you need to taper it down slightly because your waist is smaller. So that's why mine is straight, because my waist and my hips are the same. Right, so that's that piece. Right, so I've got the first piece laid out, and I'm just going to mark that to the 10 inch that I said I was going to do it to. Right, so from that particular piece, I've got 6 strips. So what I will do is I will put 2 in the top tier and 4 in the bottom, and that's going to give me my gather. I'm going to cut this out exactly the same, to the same measurements as I've just done with that other fabric, but I'm going to do it off camera just to save on time. Right, so this bridal veil is like a big oblong piece and the lace is going all the way around it. So literally I'm just going to start from the bottom of the lace because it's scalloped. I'm going to start from the bottom, measuring it up 10 inch and then cutting the panel out as I go. So you can see what I'm doing here, guys. So I'm going to do the same all the way around and then we'll come back and see what we've got, the netting that's left in the centre. This is all the lace at 10 inch cut off and that is the piece. So that's a solid looped piece. Now what I'm going to do with the net that's left, I'm basically going to go around it like I've just done with the lace, keep measuring 10 inch all the way around and cutting it as I'm going until I get where I've not got much left. So I'll just keep working my way in and that's what I'm going to be doing. This is going to be the top tier. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to lay this down on my settee. But what I'm going to do with this piece is I'm going to measure for the cotton and I'm going to do 2. So I'm going to be doing it in 2 halves. But then that's the amount that the lace needs gathering to fit this piece. So I'm going to take my cotton and I'm going to allow about that much for it to hang down on the needle. So from that, I'm taking it to that and then literally just following it . And then I'm going to cut two lengths of cotton to that same amount because like I say it's my 2 halves. Right, and I'm just going to snap that there. So I've got my 2 pieces of cotton for the lace bit. Right, so what I need to do on this lace bit now, I need to find, I'm going to use where I've overlocked it, and then I'm going to follow that by running my fingers down the edges. And then where this bit is here, I'm going to put the clip because then I've got the 2 halves for the 2 halves that I'm going to be doing on the top one, so that when this is gathered it'll fit the top one almost perfectly. Right, so I'm just going to get my needle threaded. Now on this I need to either find the seam or the clip. So I've got the clip, so I know that this is the first half of one. So starting here, when I get to where the seam is, that's where I'm going to tie this off and get the second piece to do the second half. So at this, right, so I'm going to take that clip out now because I've started that, and then I'm just going to keep weaving this and I'm just going to show you how far I'm going down because it's not far at all. So you can just see there how far I'm actually stitching down it. And then you just keep weaving across, keep going in. And this is just so you're going to use this thread to pull it, to gather it onto the other piece of netting. So they don't need to be tiny, these are probably about just under 1 centimetre apart that I do. So we just keep doing that as we're going round. Okay, so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to do carry on to the end of this half, but I'm going to do that off camera. So I've come to to the first half because I've reached the seam. So what I'm going to do with this, I'm simply going to keep tying this off so that none of that's going to come undone. And I'm going to put quite a few stitches in because, like I say, I do not want it to come undone. Okay, I'm going to cut that off. And then I'm going to thread that other piece of cotton that I've got. Right, so I'm going to start doing the other half now. Exactly the same. I'm just feeding it through. So this will just be gathering as I'm doing it. Right, so I'm just going to carry on with this until I get to the end. That was all tied off at the end of that second one. So what I'm doing now is I need to, where the gathers are, you can see the gathers here. I need to make sure that they are pretty even going round, so you've not got clumps of tight, like it's all tight there. So I'm going to just spread it out so it's all nice and even going round. Got my there, and then I just need to find my other half here because these now need clipping onto the top tier. So that's there. So I'm just going to put a clip on that. Right, so that's the right side there. So I just need to get this, and I need to find out where the other half is on this. Okay, so that's about there. Right, so I'm going to put that clip there. And then what I'm going to do then is where this clip is here, I'm going to clip this onto it. That's that off, and then where the seam is here, that needs clipping onto the other half. I'm going to clip that together. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go around clipping it in ever so often. Okay guys, so that's all clipped round, so I've come to the joke now, and I'm going to stitch these two tiers together, and then I'm going to overlock round it. But I like to do it on here and then go to the overlocker because then I can do it much quicker on there. Right, so I want the straight bit on top, and it doesn't matter whereabouts you start when you're stitching these together. Now what I've just done is I've just got the cotton and I've just put this around my hip and brought it out so that when it's all gathered, I'm going to be able to get it up and down over my hips. And then what I've done is I've cut it into 2 pieces. So I've got 2 pieces of cotton. So one's for the front, one's for the back. So then you're going to get the same amount of gather in the front and the back instead of doing it in one piece of thread and then trying to get your gather around. So if you do it in 2 pieces, you're more likely to get your gathering better. Right, so that's where the halfway was. So I need to find out now where the halfway is. So I'm just going to get the seam, because there's a seam somewhere in here that I made because there was a hole there. Let's have a look where that is. There. And then I just need to work my way down here. So I start in the middle. And I've got different clothes on because I've just done my workout, so I'm carrying on doing this bit and then I'm going to call it a day after this and then finish the other off probably tomorrow. Right, so I've got this in the centre, so this is halfway at the end here and this is where I'm going to start sewing from. So again, as I did on that first, when I was, doing the gathers, I'm doing the same thing here, where I'm just going to keep weaving the needle until I get to the seam, and then that's going to be 1/2 of this layer. So that's either the front or the back. So I'm going to do the exact same on the other half with the other piece of the cotton. But I'm going to do that off camera. So this is the first layer, guys. So that's what's going to be the top layer. So you're going to have the lace showing on top of it. So I've got 2 more layers to do. But I'm calling it at that for today. So I will carry on tomorrow with another layer. For one of the layers, what I've done already with this one is I've simply took it to the overlocker and I've stitched down and joined the seams. Done the same on the other side, so then I've got 1 loop again. So for the top tier, I've got 2 pieces. For the bottom tier, I've simply put 4 pieces together. And again, I've stitched them all on the seam to join them, so that's 1 loop. And then I've literally gone around the bottom and overlocked all the way around it. And that's going to be the bottom tier. And this is going to be the inside layer. Now, because that's 4, so it can gather up for 2. So they're going to be twice the amount coming on the bottom tier. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces of cotton again. So I'm going to take it to the end like I did with the first lace one. Take it to the end, measure that across to there, and then I'm going to allow the fold over that I need to hang down from the needle. So I'm going to cut 2 of those, because again I want 2 pieces on 1 piece of this thread, and then that will fit on 1 piece of the top tier. Right, so I'm going to take these into the other room and then just start tacking across the top of this to gather it up. Right, so I've got my first piece of cotton threaded through my needle, and I'm going to start off at a side seam. So where I've got this side seam, and I'm going to keep doing this until I've got to the end of the second piece. And it's just a case of, again, interweaving, not far down from the top. Right, so on here, so that there, doubled over, is roughly what I've left, you know, to hang down from the needle. So at this point, I'm just going to tie this off. I just keep coming through the seam a few times so that it's not going to come undone. Okay, so I'm going to cut that off. So that's the first two pieces done. So I've got another piece of cotton to do on the other two pieces. And what happens, the way that doing it this way is, you're going to end up with the same amount of gather front and back. So I'm just going to do that, but I'm going to do it off camera because I'm just going to really repeat what I've just done. Got the piece laid on the table that I've just literally stitched around the top. So I've got the cotton at that side where I started and the cotton at that side, so I know that these have got the same amount of gather in them. Now, so this piece here, I've got the wrong side there with the seam stitched, so that the wrong side's there with the seam stitched. So I'm going to put those together and then clip it in place. Right, so where I've got this seam, which is one panel, I'm going to get that, fold that in half, and then pin that, because then I know that that is a quarter of what I'm wanting to pin. So in this piece, I can just clip this every 6 or 7 inch. And again, as you're going round, if you think there's too much pleating in one area, just pull it across. In the middle of that. I'm going to work my way around at this. So I've got a seam there, got a seam there, and I'm going to clip those together, because then I've got another quarter and another piece that's been gathered. Okay, so this one again, we're going to come round, and this piece that hasn't got a seam in, again, I'm going to put those together where the seams are, pull that so I find the centre, and then this is going to go where the seam is here. And then once again, we're going to clip this along. But you see what I mean about measuring your cotton and then just using that amount after you've measured it from the top piece? It's just fitting spot on to how it should. Right, so let's take this to the jug and get it stitched in place. I'm going to stitch with the gathering on top, making sure that it's all flat underneath, and just keep gathering it as I'm going round. this is all gathered at the top of the top tier. I've got the seam there and the seam there, and I've just made sure that I've gone across and just slightly move the gathering along. So I've just gone along and moved the gathering so it's all even, and this is the one that's going to be the ones that's going to be touching my legs, so the inner layer. So I've already got 2 layers here, because like I said, I've already done this one. So I'm going to get this, because I've stitched these 2 together just on the top, and I'm going to find the seams, and then I'm going to come inside, and then I'm going to fetch this one inside the fold. So once again, I'm going to start clipping these in place. So it's back to the Duke to stitch these 3 layers together. So come to the Duke to just, like I said, join these 3 layers together. Just making sure that all the edges are together, that nothing's getting caught up underneath. Okay, back onto the overlocking. So same again, I've got to make sure that it's flat underneath. That's the hard work done on the petticoat, and this is all the 3 layers assembled together. That feels so lovely and soft, so it's going to be really comfortable to wear this. Now it's coming up to just after 7 in the evening, so I'm going to call it a day there, and then tomorrow I'm going to be looking at doing the top, just the top part, because this is what takes your time, what you're doing a petticoat, actually making all your bottom gathered and then doing your layers. But I've been on that 2 days now, and then like I said, tomorrow I'm going to get the top bit done, and then it'll be finished. So I'll carry on with this tomorrow then. So what I've just been and done is, this is the top part that's going to be the top part for the petticoat, and I've literally overlocked around the top and overlocked around the bottom, and then I've just joined the seam down the side, and that is my tube for the top of the petticoat. Very simple, hemming it on both sides to neaten the edges and then joining the seam. So that is very simple to do. So what I need to do now then, I've got some 1/2 inch elastic, and I'm going to simply fetch this round to where I'll be wearing it, and then I need to just decide how tight I want that to be, because you have got a little bit of weight in a petticoat, and the bigger you go, the heavier it's going to be. A little bit looser. Right, so where that is, I'm going to allow 1 inch for overlap. So I'm just going to cut that. So I'm overlapping that there by 1 inch. Holding that in place and just making sure that that's going to be fine, and it is. Now normally what I'd do is stitch this, put it onto the top of this, and then stitch it on and overlock it together, but my overlocker is a bit temperamental these days, so that's why I've overlocked the seam. So what I'm going to be doing now on the duke, first of all, I'm going to stitch this to make my loop, and then I'm going to come and I'm just going to clip it in place, and then I will take it to the duke and just stitch round it. So to make sure that I get the even amount of gather in the elastic, where I've just joined it there, I'm going to bring this across to the half marker, and then I'm going to fetch that across again, fold it in half again, so I get the quarter marker. So I've got 4 quarters marked out on there. So with this, there's no top and bottom to it because, like I said, my waist and my hips is the same, and the pattern design on this, if you look, the hearts go up as well as down, so I could use either end. But I need to do the same where the seam is there. I'm going to clip the opposite end, and that's my half marker. I'm then going to get the seam and that clip, fold that in half, bring that across, and I've got my quarter markers. So I'm just going to clip that, and then I've got my 4 quarters. And I'm clipping this on the wrong side of the fabric, because what is going to happen is that's going to be stitched to the overlocker, it's going to be turned over, and it's going to be inside, but that's the right side, and it's going to be on the inside. So I'm going to take this side seam and clip that pin. So I've got there, that's the quarter that I need to stretch that elastic to. So I'm going to get the other 2 clips, take that off there, clip that on, and I'm working my way around, just following the clips. Taking the clip off the elastic and clipping it on with the seam. So there, all the way around, is going to be the same amount of elastic in each quarter, so it's gathered evenly. Okay guys, duke to stitch it in place. Right, so where my side seam is, that's where I'm going to start. Unclipping that and putting the edge of the elastic to the edge of the fabric. A little back tack. Make sure the needle's down, so as you're pulling this, it's not going to pull from underneath the machine foot because your needle's in holding it in place. And then I'm just going to run this down the middle of the overlocking. Again, needle down, pulling the elastic, making sure that that's on the edge. Needle down, take the next clip out, and I'm going to do this all the way around. So I'm going to get that in the middle. Right, so that's the elastic stitched on. So what I'm going to do now, I'm back to the seam. Okay, so I'm going to fold that over. And we're going to have the wrong side of the fabric facing up, so that is just turned over. I'm going to put it under again where the seam is. Right, and I'm just going to put that down and do a back tack, and then I'm just going to keep pulling this, so it's pulling it tight here. You're not going to have any flabby sagginess, it's going to be tight because you're pulling your fabric here, and then just stitching that down in place. Needle down again because you're pulling at the elastic, pulling this down to make it tight, and again stitching in the middle of the overlocking stitch. Good back tack. So that is the elastic inside the waistband. But what I'm going to do, because I've made this from scratch, I'm going to put one of my labels in. Just get that off. And that is my Tina Bambina label. So I'm going to get that where this is the back where I've crossed the elastic over and stitched it. So that's where I'm going to be putting the label. And when you put a label in something, it just gives it that professional finish to your garment. So what I've done here is, I've got 2 seams that I'm using as my sides, pulling that. I've folded it in half and clipped there. So again, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters. The top bit here, I'm going to do exactly the same. I've got it there and I'm going to clip it there. Front, back. I'm going to put that together to the seam again, bring that across, and I'm going to put my 2 clips in, and this is going to give me my quarters again. So again, I've got my 4 quarters on there. So what I'm going to do now is clip these together. So my side seam's there, so that'll go to that side seam. So the clips you're putting together, taking one off and clip those together. The side seam, where am I? I found my side seam is there, and that's going to be clipped to that side seam. Okay, so this one, clip those together, take one clip off, clip them together. And on the other side seam, and there we go, I'm clipping those together. So there I've got 4 quarters. Now where that's been clipped, right side of petticoat to right side of the top, and we're stitching on the wrong side of the fabrics. So because there, you can see there, I've got excess in there, but bear in mind it's got to be stretched over your hips. So that is going to be pulled to be stitched in, pulled to be stitched in, all the way around. So we're going back to the duke and stitch this all in place. And where the overlocking is, I'm coming just this side of the overlocking, probably, you can see the overlocking there, I'm going to stitch about there. So that is probably a centimetre maybe. So I'm going to get, where's my next piece? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that, and then I'm going to go to the middle and put those together. So underneath you need to make sure that that's all laying flat, that you're not going to have any tucks. So let's put that in, take that clip out there, and give that a good back tight. Making sure that your edges are together there. Making sure that it's all laying flat there, that there's no neck tucked up. And all the time I'm making sure that my needle's still put down into the fabric, because you're pulling and tugging as you're getting this in position. You don't want to be pulling it from under the feet. So again, making sure all this is out of the way, because you can see there how it wants to come up and lay out it wants to do, but it's not going to do, because I'm not going to allow it to. And then pull this down, making sure that all the net's lying flat there. So that's the finished petticoat, guys. So measuring that from the top to the bottom of that lace, is exactly 27 inch to what I worked it out from. But that just looks beautiful, doesn't it, with the lovely fancy top and the beautiful lace on the bottom. So this is the finished petticoat, guys. All very swishy. It's lovely and soft to the skin. So you have your high piece where that's nice and flat, so there's no excess fabric there because you don't want any pleats showing underneath your clothes. And then I've just got the longer net to the bottom. So let me put a skirt on. Let's have a look at it with my skirt on. That does a great job than a shorter petticoat for just taking the bottom out. Now this was the first petticoat, guys, that I made from a different bridal veil, and all this is made from the bridal veil because it had a huge train on the back. But if you just look at the top layer and the embroidered, the sequins on it, it's absolutely beautiful. So this is another option, that if you have got a beautiful veil, how to make yourself a pretty petticoat. And then I just put another beautiful stretch lace panel on top instead of a plain one. To use bridal veils, even if you've got not a massive one, but you've got one with a decent amount of netting in it and lace, you can still make a wow factor top layer of a petticoat. So I hope you've enjoyed this, mate, guys. Take care for now and see you soon. Bye for now.